Well, despite those tech-friendly moves, Russia has come under fire for squashing internet and tech companies. It blocked one of the most popular instant messaging and blogger apps, Telegram, last month. The move has led to protests. Well, for a closer look at the tech sector in Russia, let's bring in Stein Smith. Sean is an assistant professor at City University of New York. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So let's start with Russia investing in its own tech hub or version of Silicon Valley. What needs or goals does this address?
Sure. So, the underlying goal is to really sort of cash in on all of the tech talent that is in Russia and that is working in the high-tech industries, both in Russia and overseas. Because I do think that a point that is often overlooked is just really how many Russians and how many Russian companies are involved in the area of AI, blockchain, and also cryptocurrency. And I do think that a high-profile example of this that has gone sort of unnoticed is that Russia has actually rolled out its own 2025 plan, right? And the whole plan focuses on these areas, AI, and cryptocurrencies. So I do think that this whole push towards sort of growing their own sort of homegrown IT sector is really trying to fill that need.
But this clearly does seem to be a priority, this investing in tech for President Putin. Now, how about Russia's economic diversification overall? How does tech play into that?
Sure. So I would first lead off by saying that there is some work that does have to be done, right? That the whole Russian economy is still heavily dependent on oil and other sort of hydrocarbons. And all of that said, though, that the tech sector is one, it's a high-profile sector, really, because it is getting a ton of investment in terms of capital and of people, and it is actually growing quite fast.
So for people who aren't familiar, tell us about some of the most well-known Russian tech companies and how they're operating in the country.
Sure. So really overall, right, because there are a whole bunch of firms working both in Russia and overseas in all these high-tech areas, right? But sort of the overarching theme that is different, right, from other companies in China or here in the U.S. is that in China, really, and that in Russia, really sort of the top firms in these areas are actually firms that are either operated at that sort of state level or that have partnerships at that level. So it is an interesting blend of private and sort of public interest here.
So what is the environment like for these new tech startups trying to get funding and trying to take market share from these larger, more established companies, especially amid the backdrop of sanctions from the West?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. So obviously, right now, no conversation on Russia can be had in full if we don't sort of bring up that issue, right? And obviously, all of those issues are issues both on a political side and on a money side. But all of that said, though, there are a whole bunch of firms here in the U.S., in Europe, in China, overseas, everywhere, right, that are both active in terms of the personnel involved and also the actual cash that is being put to work.
Now, we did see with the sanctions, some Russians perhaps leaving to find other more friendly environments where they could really start their businesses. So talk about Russia's efforts to retain talent and what they're doing, especially with this Siberian startup incubator as well.
Yes. So the whole concept of an incubator or sort of helping that entrepreneurship is a big focus right now, right? Because obviously the best way to own information and data and to own these markets going forward is to have your own talent doing it. And really some of the some of the key characteristics in that are to give these entrepreneurs access to capital, access to other people interested in these topics, and to also do it in a manner that is not overly hyped or really overly emphasized from a oversight point of view.
Now, something that's in the headlines right now, the Russian court ruling in favor of regulators blocking the messaging app Telegram. So can we expect to see other apps which have issues with providing user encryption keys potentially see the same scrutiny?
Yes, and sort of the whole issue right now in this whole space, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, that whole ongoing sort of conversation between companies who are actually building out these platforms and the governments who want access to that information is an ongoing issue, both here in the US, in China, Europe, Russia, everywhere. So all of that is an ongoing conversation that really still has to play out.
And just quickly, we have about 20 seconds here. Your thoughts on the interest and development of cryptocurrencies and blockchain? How much momentum are we seeing in Russia?
There's a ton of force right now, both in terms of capital and of people being put into this area.
All right, thank you so much, Stein Smith there of City University of New York.